Now to Hong Kong, where 14 pro-democracy activists have been found guilty of violating the city's so-called national security law. The charges stem from their campaign calling for independent elections in the semi-autonomous city. They're among 47 activists arrested under the law in 2021. 31 pleaded guilty and are awaiting sentencing. 2 were acquitted. Let's bring in Elaine Pearson. She's the Asia Director with Human Rights Watch and joins us live from the Thai capital, Bangkok. Elaine, good to have you with us. So 14 of the 47 activists have been found guilty under China's so-called national security law. Are you surprised by the verdict, Elaine? And was this really a foregone conclusion, do you think?
No, we're not really surprised. I mean, prior to this, the national security law has had a 100% conviction rate. But, you know, the reality is, I think this conviction really shows what utter contempt the Hong Kong and Chinese authorities have for democratic political processes. I mean, what these people have been convicted of is holding an informal primary vote. You know, that is something that people should not be going to prison for. And yet, time and again, we're seeing the application of the national security law is really designed to smother the democratic movement in Hong Kong. And I think that's what this sentence is trying to do.
Yeah, Elaine, tell us a bit more about these activists. I mean, some of them were prominent lawmakers, we know, but what more do we know about them and what they're actually charged with?
Well, that's right. I mean, there's prominent lawmakers like long hair. These are activists ranging in age from their 20s to their 60s, you know, 47 in total on trial. So this is a large trial. We have a former nurse. We have a former journalist. You have people who are lawyers, academics. So I think this is a really broad section of people in Hong Kong. And I think that's actually what made the Hong Kong authorities so afraid that the democratic movement has this broad support. What they were doing was that they were trying to get Beijing to live up to its obligation to give Hong Kong people universal suffrage. So they organised back in 2020 an informal primary vote. 600,000 people participated in that. And that is something that, you know, honestly, it shouldn't really be controversial. But obviously in Hong Kong, they wanted to send a message. And so they've been tried for subversion.
Elaine, in terms of the bigger picture, what does this verdict then mean for Hong Kong and people living there who, of course, once believed that democracy and human rights were values to be respected?
Well, I think this case is a real turning point for Hong Kong, honestly. I mean, things changed when the national security law passed in 2020. We've seen many people have to flee into exile. Many of the democratic leaders are either in prison, in hiding. You know, Hong Kong is not the same place that it was. Next week, it will be the anniversary of the Tiananmen massacre. It will be 35 years. Every year in Hong Kong, there has been vigils to commemorate this anniversary. It's very important. And what we've seen in recent days is we've seen fresh arrests of people, and they won't even talk about Tiananmen. They just say they're people who are trying to organise an event to commemorate a politically sensitive date. So I think that tells you everything about how Hong Kong has changed. And this is something that should be very concerning for the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's an important point you make. Just a final thought from you, Elaine. How much does Hong Kong then now resemble mainland China in terms of restrictions on democracy, human rights, free speech? And are there much wider implications across the Asia region because of this case?
Well, I think now, you know, with this verdict, we see Hong Kong every day looking more and more like the mainland in terms of what people can say, in terms of what people can do, in terms of the way in which the authorities are clamping down on any protest or free speech. And I think that does matter for the rest of the region. I mean, in the past, the rest of Asia really looked to Hong Kong as a bit of a bastion, certainly of media freedom, and, you know, looked to Hong Kong as an important economic centre. I think the rest of Asia now will be, you know, thinking twice, particularly about the implications this has for rule of law, for transparency, the fact that, you know, these were handpicked judges that were involved in the trial instead of a traditional jury trial. So this really does have implications more broadly for other governments in the region.
Elaine Pearson, really good to get your thoughts and your analysis here. Thank you very much indeed for talking to Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.